Hey guys, Sean here, and welcome to the F1 Word and our live debate on Liberty's 2021 proposals. Just let the chat catch up because that looked like it just completely went crazy. There we go, we're away, lovely. How are we all doing in the chat today? Are we all good? Everybody looks ready for a bit of a chat and debate. I will be joined by Chaz and Jonty in just a second. Loads to get through tonight, of course. Liberty Media announced their proposals on Friday in Bahrain. I believe it was Friday. Didn't get a lot of information in the press release, but a lot more information has come out since. And of course, you've got all your sources and your leaked information and whatnot. So loads to go over today. So going to very quickly, I've got some really well put together slides. You'll love these on the power units and whatnot and what they're proposing. So they are looking at cheaper, simpler, louder and hybrid engines, keeping them hybrid and road relevant as well. Something which, yeah, I'm sure we're going to debate, but Formula One hasn't really been road relevant for a very long time, but they want to remain road relevant anyway. They want to keep it attractive for new manufacturers, reduce the necessity of grid penalty, therefore making the engines more reliable, and they want teams and manufacturers to be able to build a unique power unit. So, lots in there to go over. I've got more information out. These are just a brief overview of them. In terms of cost control, they want to introduce a cost cap of around $150 million. It's been reported and pretty much confirmed, to be fair, by Toto Wolff. Some standardised elements of the car, something that actually, if you're a long-time viewer to the channel, something we've talked about a lot, and a lot of you in the chat, to be fair, are quite up for that, so long as it doesn't take away from the show. Car differentiation must remain, so they don't want customer teams following an 80. You don't want a grid of Toro Rossos and Red Bulls, basically, is what they're saying with that one. A more balanced revenue distribution, something F1 is desperate for, and revenue support for cars and engines, so a bit of money to help out on the manufacturer side, which we will talk about in a moment, of course. In terms of regulations, these do go on a bit, don't they? We don't get a lot of information, but more raceable cars, which will in turn improve overtaking opportunities. If you watched the Australian Grand Prix, as I'm sure you did, yes, we need better. We need better. Bahrain was pretty good, but a lot of that was from a DRS zone, of course. Cars must remain different. So again, we can't have customer cars. The one I found most interesting in this, though, the driver must remain the main factor in performance. So I just found that quite an interesting one, as in the car can't be the thing that's making the difference on the track, which, yeah, I can't see that happening, but obviously drivers do make a difference in the car, but the car still plays a massive part. And fan-irrelevant parts will be standardised. Anything that doesn't matter to us will be standardised, as we said there. And in terms of reports and rumours, it is reported and, again, pretty much confirmed it's $150 million for the cost cap. That is not going to stick. We will talk about it in a second, but there's no way that's sticking. Ferrari will still receive $40 million, but that's half plus what they were getting before. Manufacturers will receive an additional $10 million to help with the building of their engines. The remaining roughly $800 million will be split between the teams, and there are talks of race weekend format changes. I am so glad I got through that in 2 breaths. Good evening, Jonty. How are we doing, mate?
I'm very good. How is everyone?
I'm pretty good. I'm looking forward to this one. It's something we seem to have spent most of the winter talking about, and finally we seem to have some information. So looking forward to this one. Also, good evening to Chaz as well. Hello, Chaz.
Yep. Hello, Sean, and also hello to everyone watching as well.
It's it's good to have 3 on again. We can have a proper debate. I'm sure we're going to get into this. They are going to keep scrolling on screen, as you can see there. So power units then, Jonty, they're going to stick hybrid. They want them to be louder, simpler, cheaper, and remain road relevant. It's pretty much the same jargon we've been hearing since, October, November last year?
Yeah, on the engines, they haven't really said anything different at all, which is a bit of a shame. It's still that point of road relevance. Hybrid isn't really the future of road relevance, is it?
No, I don't think it is at all. I don't think really. When was the last time F1 was road relevant? I've got a Vauxhall Astra and it's never had a V8 in it. I can't think, no, not relevant to me, but I can't think of the last time F1 was really properly road relevant. So to say remain road relevant seems a little bit unusual to me. I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on these hybrid engines, Chaz. They are what they are. I understand why they're doing it, but it would have been nice to maybe see, if they're sticking hybrid, going a little bit more aggressive. Maybe a V8 hybrid would be nice.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see that, but I think, again, as I've said plenty of times, they've committed so heavily to this type of technology, and I agree with the road relevance. I just don't see why, as F1, they should be, sticking to that. F1 has never been road relevant, and it never will be road relevant.
There's parts of it, isn't there, that the MGUH now does go into a lot of the cars we see on the road or the newer models, but they're rumoured still to be taking that away for 2021 anyway, Jonty. So that removes some of what little road relevance there was left anyway for me.
Yeah, it does. And I think there's a big confusion into what you can call road relevance. In the past, Formula One was sort of the platform for new things to be developed. Disc brakes came from Formula One, eventually made it to road cars. And it was always about Formula One doing it and then it getting to road cars. But now with Formula One going hybrid, that's something that's already been around on road cars. So it's switched, which makes the whole thing very awkward to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's supposed to be a debate, but I completely agree with you on that. The old days, there he goes again. There was stuff coming off F1 cars that ended up on your road cars, but you just don't see it now. And I don't think they need to be road relevant. And I've just seen somebody mentioning Ferrari in chat there about road relevance. They don't even build I know they build sports cars, but not like a proper day-to-day road car, do they? So really, that doesn't make any odds. But there's not really a lot to say on engines. I know I saw somebody in chat before we started saying, "Oh, can we just get through a video without people asking for V10s and V12s?" Deep down inside, we'd all love a V10 back, but we all know it's never going to happen. There's just no way the world will allow it now. So I think we are kind of getting the hybrids. What can they do to make these louder, Jonty? Because that's the only thing. I think they're talking about raising the top end of the rev limit, I think, to, I believe, 3,000. I did write it down somewhere. 3,000 RPM.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to really raise the volume. It'll just raise the pitch. The higher the revs, the higher pitch the noise. You're only going to get the loudness from bigger displacement in the cylinders. So it's another slightly gimmicky, I think.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Looking at, I don't know. I just hope they don't turn up with. Do you remember a couple of years ago when they tested out that flipping trumpet? I just hope we don't end up with one of those again, Chaz, because that would just be humiliating for everybody.
Yeah, they need to stop doing stuff like that. When it comes to how loud or not loud these power units are, I think we just need to accept that they are what they are, because I don't think they're going to get any louder really at all unless we, put it to V8 hybrids or something else.
Yeah, it's a fair point. They're talking about making the sport more attractive for new manufacturers as well. Somebody, I can't remember who it was now. You'll have to remind me, John, if you remember. Somebody, Aston Martin, tweeted out that with these possible changes to regulations, it could be something they could look at in 2021, entering the sport. We do run the risk of losing Ferrari and Mercedes from Formula One. I still don't think Ferrari will go. I'm not going to go back into that. We still run that risk. Is it going to be... It's going to hurt to lose them. There's no doubt about that. As much as we all say, "I'll just go, whatever," but it's going to hurt to lose them. Is that going to be offset at all if we do end up with an Aston Martin, a Porsche, or maybe a Cosworth as an independent supplier, Jonty? Or is the impact that Ferrari and Mercedes have on the sport going to be too huge to lose?
If we get all those names coming back, then losing the two wouldn't be that big a deal. I think this comes down to one of the biggest problems with all of these suggestions. It's something that has been talked about a lot on Discord, and Racing made the point of saying the biggest problem is the teams having a say. It needs to be Liberty and the FIA coming up with the rules and saying, "There's the rules, off you go. If you don't like it, don't let the door hit you." The teams have far too much input or decision making on this issue. Can you imagine if they did this in football and all the teams went, "Oh no, we're not having that. We don't like that. We'll leave." It would never happen. The FA makes the rules, FIFA makes the rules, and that's it. They really should just get rid of the team's say in the engine changes.
I don't think, Chaz, as much as, like I say, we say, if you don't like it, go. We don't want to lose Ferrari, do we? We don't want to lose Mercedes, but do Liberty Media need to look at the sport and what's best for it rather than what's best for Ferrari and Mercedes?
They need to do a bit of both, because if they can try and find a compromise and still keep Mercedes and Ferrari happy and within Formula One, then they can kind of come away with it being a success. But they're on a tightrope for the minute, Liberty Media. They they're damned if they do and damned if they don't.
I mean, you say compromise there. I mean, what is the compromise? Ferrari want to protect their long-standing team bonus. Liberty don't want to give them it, or they want to rename it and give them a reduced payment. So, Ferrari through F1 history haven't been great with the compromise. So I can't see where they're going to be able to meet in the middle unless Ferrari get what they want. And I agree with what John said. I think Racing said it, as you say, on Discord, and also I think Martin Brundle said it in the build-up. Slap the rules on the table. That is what they are. You've got 48 hours to sign up. Don't like it, go do your new series with Bernie, which will flop. But is there a compromise in there, John? Can you see Ferrari willing to really make any concessions, I guess, or big ones at least?
I think that comes down to the historical payment. As long as they're getting it, I'm pretty sure Ferrari will go ahead, will be happy with whatever it is. They won't say that out in public, but they will take it. If the historical payment goes, then there's the big risk of them going.
We'll stick with Ferrari. Well, at the moment, I believe they're getting nearly $100 million just because they were born, basically. It seems absolutely ridiculous they're getting that. It is rumoured to be reduced to 40 million, then there's the 10 million on top, isn't there, for helping them out to build the engine. So they're getting sort of 50 million, it's about half of what they were getting. But when you consider and you look at all these charts, Autosport do them all the time, of, team payments, there have been years when Ferrari have finished third in the Constructors and earned more money than the team that are first. That is not sport. I've said that so many times over the winter. That is not how it should be. Ferrari should be recognised for what they've done for the sport, but at the same time, it needs to be for everybody. So I just don't think it's handed out right. And they're even with the new proposals, I think, that they've put forward. I found a great graphic. I think a few have seen it on racefans.net, actually. I don't know if you've seen it, Jonty. It was posted in Discord, where they've kind of got projected payments for 2021 onwards based on what we know now, not including long-standing team bonus. So Ferrari would get $115.5 million, which is basically 5 million less than Mercedes would get. But then when you slap their 50 million on top, they're still earning more than the championship winners. So it's win-win for Ferrari, isn't it, if they stay?
Yeah, exactly. They've got no real reason to go unless that payment disappears. I think that really is their biggest point to argue on.
Would you still give them a payment if you were the FIA? Or would you reduce it further? Or Liberty Media FOM, whichever way you want to look at it.
I wouldn't give them one at all. You want more money? Do better.
That's a fair point, isn't it? Yeah. They're talking about splitting the pot a bit better, which we'll talk about as well shortly. Just stick with the power units for a second. Chaz, they're saying reduce the necessity for grid penalties, which means making these engines more reliable. How is making these more reliable than they already are ever going to make them cheaper and simpler?
I have no idea. I'm baffled, honestly, at that.
I look at the list, and the more I look at it, I just see some great points, but then they're contradicted by some other points, and I can't see half of this getting pushed through. Whatever the details are, I can't see half of it going through. I don't know what you think, Jonty. It just seems to contradict itself all over the place.
Well, that's not really surprising. That's
no.
The FAA in a nutshell. They'll say one thing 1 minute, something else the next. And neither of them will be of any relevance to either of the things they say.
They make me laugh. They do make me laugh. We'll go on to cost control, because like I say, not a lot of information around the power unit. Now, they want to bring in a cost cap. They talked about this back in 2008, 9-ish, didn't they? When we had Manor, or Virgin as they were there, HRT and Caterham, or Lotus as they were then, wanting to enter the sport. They promised a cost cap. It never happened. They obviously folded. Liberty are committed to one, and they're saying around $150 million, according to reports. Toto Wolff came out on Sky at the weekend and said that's just not going to happen. That they've got to reduce their budget from around 400 million, which will mean laying off staff or moving staff around to get down to that bracket. There may be a cost cap, John T, but it's never going to be that low, is it?
Again, that comes down to how much of an argument Mercedes, Ferrari, probably Red Bull, probably even McLaren as well get to put into it. Because we certainly know it is possible, because Force India, Haas, Sauber, Renault probably, they all do it for less than that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Williams and Force India, particularly Force India, do it on a shoestring, don't they? I think they're around 90 million they work to, which when you look at where they finished the last couple of years, that's really quite impressive.
Yeah, it is massively impressive. So I don't know why the bigger teams argue that much.
Guess is why actually when you look at a cost cap and you think, well, if Force India can do it, surely Ferrari and Mercedes can, and certainly Red Bull can, because they can cap the costs on Red Bull, but they can always go and recoup some of that money from Toro Rosso, can't they? And maybe spend a little bit less there if they need to. I'm not saying they'd be clever like that at all, but I don't know. I can't see $150 million being enough, and I'm not entirely sure a cost cap's ever going to happen. They might try and control it in another way, Chaz, but I can't see F1 with a cost cap.
No, I can't, because I think, is it all 10 teams have to agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's never going to happen then. No chance. Because the reason the big teams don't want a cost cap is because if they limit it to $150 million, then they can't have the advantage in money and resource that they have over Force India, Williams, Haas, and that's what they want.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it's 10 teams have to agree on this one, because this is one of those either you sign up or you don't, I think. But usually on regulations, everyone needs to agree. But I don't know. I also kind of feel a little bit not sorry for Ferrari and Mercedes. I'm probably completely on my own with this next statement, but they earn the money. They earn it away from the track. Shouldn't teams like that be allowed to spend it how they want to spend it and spend as much as they want?
I don't know. It's a tricky one.
That almost kind of answers itself. Is they've earned it away from the track. Why should they be permitted to spend it at the track?
Interesting enough, actually, what I didn't point out there is apparently the 40 million Ferrari are going to get, they're not allowed to spend on improving performance at the track. They've got to find that money elsewhere. So I don't quite know how you'd police that. I'm still not entirely sure how you police a cost cap, to be honest, with 10 teams to keep an eye on, and teams, like I say, Ferrari and Sauber and Red Bull and Toro Rosso, that money and staff can move around quite easily, can't they? So I just wonder if they're earning that, if they should be allowed to spend it. But it's a fair point. They're gaining an advantage, aren't they, with money they haven't earned from the sport. But standardised parts, John T, I'm a fan of some. Where do you stand on them?
I'm sure there are parts which could be standardised quite easily without making a big difference. It's just a case of filtering out which parts those are.
I think Liberty are talking effectively parts that aren't relevant to the fan. So I assume that means things like your brakes and some of the electronics inside the car and maybe even gearboxes, because obviously we don't see any of that, do we? So it doesn't really affect us. But again, you look at manufacturers, they build their cars and their engines around their gearbox and their gearbox around their engines and their cars. So they don't want to give up that advantage. And I'm a fan of some, is what I kind of understand, but I don't think that's the way to go forward to save money when there are other areas that can be addressed, like cost capping or fairer distribution of money first, and maybe look at that for a future proposal. But a lot's going to get changed, and I can't see Ferrari or Mercedes ever accepting a stock gearbox, for example, or even Red Bull to an extent, I guess. I mean, do they get the gearbox from Renault, Red Bull?
I actually don't know that.
I seem to think they do, but I just can't see manufacturers going for that. Car differentiation, I cannot say that word, must remain. That's basically no A teams and B teams and whatnot on the grid, so not a lot to say about that. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of having a grid of Red Bulls and Toro Rossos. I don't know if you guys want to say anything on that, whether you kind of like the idea of having A teams and B teams.
I like having, say, teams like a Toro Rosso, which is obviously a B team to Red Bull, but not every single, like, I don't want every single manufacturer to have a B team, because I like having the different, types of performance between each car instead of them all being kind of the same.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I wouldn't usually go for the B team idea. However, if they are putting out the performances like Toro Rosso and Haas this year, then it really could work. You know, there's plenty of pace differential between them to allow for the racing. So if they can keep it to the formula they're using, it would be okay. But if we start getting sort of, it's a tub that they just stick some wings on, that would be a big no-no.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think the thing is with customer cars, as I suppose is their official term, but I like saying B team. The problem with customer cars is it turns into a manufacturer series, doesn't it? Because you're never going to be in a situation where a Ferrari will be allowed to be beaten by its customer car, or a Renault beaten by its customer car long term. It's never going to be allowed to happen, is it? So you end up with a two-tier championship almost, and I just don't like that idea. I kind of agree with what Claire Williams was saying in her press conference when she was sort of quizzed about Haas, when she said, we value our position as a constructor, we like to build our car. That, for me, growing up, was what F1 was. A team built their car. If they had to buy their engine, fine, but they built their car from the ground up. That was racing. If it was quick, it was quick. If it was terrible, as Williams are finding out this year, of course, then it's tough. You've built the car. You can't point the finger anywhere else. So I think if they want to keep F1 at the pinnacle of technology and development and at the top of motorsport, then teams need to be having a lot more say in the car that they build. Haas, their model works. There's no denying that, but I kind of feel like they should, 2021 onwards, be building their car, probably more of their car than they are.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Haas want to, seriously move forward and even by some miracle become a top team, they can't rely on Ferrari like they are now, because Ferrari won't allow it.
That is a good point. It works just fine for Ferrari at the moment, with saying, look how good our customer team is, look how well we're taking care of this kid. If they start taking points from Ferrari, things will change very quickly.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. In terms of cost, though, the biggest thing with the cost control is they want to distribute this money a lot better. There's I think the estimate is around 1.8 billion, which comes into Formula One, and around $1 billion of that gets shared up between the teams at the moment. Liberty actually want them to take less of a slice of that money, which of course is why they're going to bring in cost caps and whatnot. So I think at the end of this, the big winner is always going to be Liberty Media. But does F1 need to, as they're talking, adopt, I hate using the comparison, but a Premier League style system where the championship winners get the most and those that finish at the bottom get the least?
I'd say yeah, because it's like in the Premier League, if you finish first, you deserve the most amount of money because you were the best team. So in that sense, I do agree with it.
I mean, it's the very definition of fair.
It's sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
I did write the numbers down, but I lose things very easily. But there we go. I think they're talking a scale decreasing 18% to 2%, resulting in the championship winner earning an effective 14% of the pot, and the bottom team 6%. Get your calculators out. So that's essentially what they're saying. It's a team that wins the championship gets the most, and a team that finishes last gets the least, which it should be how it is. And I think that's going to leave teams like, particularly Haas, actually, given that they didn't qualify for a payment this year because they hadn't been in the sport long enough. I think it leaves them a hell of a lot better off. Haas in last year 56.7 million, but in 2021 would receive 89 million. That is a hell of a jump for a team of that size.
Yeah, and it'll help them out a lot for them to continue into Formula One into the 2020s.
I think the other big jump is Sauber as well. I'm just looking at the graphic now, 80 million for them compared to 49.6 at the minute. So it's definitely going to work in terms of spreading the money. The problem is, Jonty, and this is kind of, I've been chuntering to myself about all day about this, but if you can give Sauber all that money, are Sauber actually going to spend that on developing the car? Are they going to be able to build a car good enough to compete? Or are we just going to end up with a situation where we pretty much have the same running order, but everyone's got a bit more money in their pocket?
Well, hopefully they'll put it into the car, but I get a feeling there might be certain people saying, right, I've put this much into the team over the last 10 years. It's time that I had some of it back.
Yeah. When you look at McLaren and Williams, I think McLaren get 30 million bonuses for long-standing team, basically, and Williams get 10 million. Look where Williams are, for example. You know, that money's obviously not been spent in the right way. So although Liberty is saying, this is the money you'll get, you need to spend this in the right way, there's no guarantee. Thank you very much, Maniac618, for the contribution. Really appreciate that, mate. But Williams are just not... They're not spending that in the right way. So, and I'm not just slamming Williams for this. There are lots of teams that do not spend their money in the right way. But Liberty can't police that either. And I just have this horrible feeling that Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull will end up worse off. Everybody will end up better off, but it'll make no difference to the running order or the racing.
No, it won't, because that's not where the real problem with the racing lies.
Do you know what? That is a seamless link, Jonty, to the next bit. You've done this before. They want more raceable cars, don't they, to improve the overtaking. So, at the risk of repeating ourselves a bit, Jonty, given what we've talked about all winter, what do they need to do to make these cars more raceable and improve the overtaking?
It's all about the aero. It really is. All you got to do is take a look at this year's new F2 car. It's basically a 2017 Formula One car with a smaller engine and basic wings on. And yet they can still follow and overtake quite happily. But the overall design of the car is pretty much just a plain F1 car. So it obviously works.
Yeah, and you could go back not even that far. I say not far, actually 9 years, 2009. What a season 09 and 10 was, you know, with the less aero on the cars, and it just gave us such good racing. And none of it was artificial because we didn't have DRS in 2010, did we?
No, it was 2011.
So there was nothing artificial about it. It was one of the best seasons we've had in years, literally right down to the wire. Incredible. And that's what Formula One should be at the end of the day. So is it just the aero that needs addressing, Chaz, or are there other things they could do or could be doing?
It's the aero. It's too complicated. It needs to be simplified. Like you said, like the 2009, 2010 era. It's just way too overcomplicated and the cars just can't follow.
Thank you very much as well for the contribution, Greg Dunbar. Really do appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah, it is the aero that makes the biggest difference. Tracks. Well, he's sighing because he knows that we're going to be talking about tracks now and people get sick of this, but they're talking about taking Formula One to the streets and getting it around cities and things like that. Not in these proposals, but they've been talking about it over the last year or so. You can clean up the aero all you like, and you can put all the artificial bits on this car to improve overtaking that you want and whatever they want to do. If you put everyone around Monaco, you're not going to get overtaking. Do we need tracks like Bahrain rather than street circuits? Stupid question because I know the answer, Jonty.
Yeah, no. No, sorry, yes.
They spat my drink out then.
No, totally heard the wrong thing then. Yeah, as the cars get wider and longer, the tracks have to go bigger. It's fairly simple logic.
Would you narrow the cars down then?
Well, that is something that could spice up the racing. They brought in the wider tyres last year for faster cars. And yes, all the cars were faster and the racing was worse than ever.
Thank you very much, Simon Collard, as well, for your contribution. Really do appreciate that. Every donation literally goes straight back into the channel. It stays in my PayPal account and whatnot. So really do appreciate that. That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about narrower cars as well, particularly when you think that you've got a wider car on a street circuit like Monaco that can never be widened. We're going to come on to overtaking at Monaco because it's going to be a big point that I want to make on some other things that are rumoured to be changing. But Bahrain was brilliant at the weekend. It's a Tilke track. We're not big fans of Tilke tracks, but that is one that he's nailed. Street circuits are not going to work, Chaz, if they want to see decent overtaking in Formula One, because it's just not going to happen. Look, it's Singapore, beautiful location, crap race, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree. If you want great overtaking, you have to have the races at actual circuits like Bahrain or like the track we're going to this weekend, Shanghai. You have to put it at actual circuits because the street circuits, they're not designed for overtaking or racing. They're designed because they're a street.
It's about the location more than the racing, isn't it? That's the thing with street circuits.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't built for an F1 race, and I will say as well, how Bahrain is not the first race of the season, I will never know.
Well,
But yeah,
that's just another that's another symptom of the current problems. Because when the racing was good, things like 2009, 2010, when the cars could overtake and could race close, first race in Australia was fantastic. Now it's just impossible there.
there was nothing happened in Australia, did it? It was all, that's why all the talk was about the virtual safety car afterwards. You know, my race review for Australia was about 7 minutes long. My one for Bahrain was 15 and a half. I think that says it all, doesn't it? So I agree, Bahrain should probably be the start of the season with F1 as it is now. But I don't know, maybe it's nostalgia, Jonty talking again, but I like having Australia as a first race, and if I had my way, Brazil would be the last one. So there you go.
Well, yeah, I think we all agree on that one.
Yeah.
You know, the point is with street circuits that they're always going to be very geometric in their design. They're always going to have 90-degree corners or a hairpin that's just two very close together 90-degree corners. On real tracks, you have the variable geometry in the corners, which allows for different lines to be taken. When you've got square corners everywhere, there's only ever one line. That's what causes the problems.
Yeah, you can't disagree with that. Like I say, it's just always, for me, Singapore, Monaco, beautiful places, and the backdrop is fantastic. And you do get odd Monaco Grand Prix that are good, you know, but usually when you get a bit of rain or a very crafty safety car. But they're just not race circuits for me. And, you know, it works for Formula E. The cars are narrower, they're easier to follow, they're a little bit slower as well, so that all helps in that. But it just doesn't work for Formula One, and Monaco has never been a thriller. Yet for some reason, we all seem to look forward to it every year. But I think that's probably because we're waiting for a crash more than anything, I believe. If we're being honest. But yeah, so we've got the aero, so we know we need to clean up. We talk about all winter, that needs to be sorted. Narrower cars, get them racing on proper tracks. If they get all of that right, then Chaz, do we finally, and you know what my view is on this, do we finally get rid of flipping DRS?
Yes, I think Liberty Media would, because I think if the driver said, you know, it's really easy to overtake even without DRS, then I think they would tell, you know, Ross Brawn, for example, that we don't need DRS anymore.
No, when I watched Bahrain back on Monday before I did the review, and as great as the race still was, I was just watching and going, this is just all because they've extended, or the majority of the overtakes were because they extended that DRS zone. So as great as it was all artificial. But do you think they'll get rid of it, Jonty, or is DRS here to stay?
I think it's going to stay until overtaking is fixed.
Would you prefer to see a KERS-like system like they have in IndyCar, a push-to-pass button?
Yeah, well, KERS was a better solution in my opinion because it was still dependent upon the driver deploying it when it needed to, when he wanted it. Even DRS would be fine if it was when the driver wanted to do it. So reduce its effectiveness by about 50%, but then let them use it whenever they want.
Yeah, I prefer KERS. I don't really like either, but I'd prefer to have a push to pass button. It's just the driver has more control, like you were saying there. Really, that's what it's about, isn't it? Not getting to within a second and then easily breezing past a Sauber on the straight or whatever. Although not in Bahrain, they did a flipping good job at the weekend. Sauber did, it's fair to say, but yeah, it's an odd one. DRS. I'm not a fan of it, but I kind of get why they have to use it at the moment, because the overtaking just isn't there. So if they nail it, there's no reason to keep it. But one thing actually that's reminded me of, I saw somebody in chat asking about whether backmarkers would rather see DRS gone. There is talk that they're going to scrap blue flags, Jonty. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that's going to cause absolute chaos?
I hope it causes chaos, because it will show up one of the big parts of racecraft, which is dealing with backmarkers. A lot of people I've talked to in comments on videos and Discord and Twitter and what have you, have been defending Bottas, saying that, you know, it was hard for him to win because he had to deal with all the traffic, this, that, and the other. Well, fourth place was over a minute behind. The front three were that much faster in Bahrain.
Yeah.
Now, if he can't breeze past cars that are a minute or more slower than you over the course of the race, then quite frankly, it's not the car or the blue flags that's the problem.
I just need to read out a donation at F1 Word. Say my name out loud. It's a donation. Thank you very much from Imapnus. I'm not that daft, mate. I'm daft, but not that daft. Very good, though. That's tickled me, sorry. What were we saying? Oh, yeah. That's terrible. That's terrible. Yeah, people make me laugh sometimes. But anything you want to add to that one, Chaz, on the blue flags?
Yeah, I think they should get rid of blue flags because cutting through traffic, as you saw in the 80s, it's a skill. And as Jonty said about Bottas, it's his fault he didn't get through the traffic, not the marshals not waving the flags or the cars not moving out the way. It's a skill getting past and cutting your way through back markers.
Yeah, that's a great point about the 80s, because Australia 86, after
Yeah.
Mansell's tyre blew up, they pitted the other Williams, and he made up, took a 15-second gap down to a 4-second gap in 2 laps, dealing with more traffic than we have now.
Yeah. And I like seeing the cars fight through the traffic, and I'm going to, another trip down memory lane here. Eddie Irvine, Ayrton Senna, Japan. Eddie Irvine got punched after that one, I believe, because he re-overtook himself with the blue flags because they could back then. And yeah, the only thing I'd miss is probably that song on YouTube of Vettel doing blue flag. That's probably the only thing I miss with blue flags. I've never been a huge fan. The problem for me, I agree with what you're saying, Jonty, about if a team's that far behind anyway, that's not blue flags causing the issue. But when they start getting lapped, that's it for their race, isn't it? That is done. They may as well just go home, quite frankly.
Yeah, because they can't fight between themselves. We've seen it a lot over the last few years of, a few cars scrapping for those last points paying positions, and then all of a sudden leader comes through, and those 3 cars scrapping end up 3 or 4 seconds apart because they have to jump out of the way for the blue flags.
Ends their weekend, doesn't it, and kind of makes everything pointless for them at that point. But then going back to your earlier point, build a quicker car then, it's hopefully with a bit of money they'd be able to do that. But yeah, I've seen a few actually just in chat saying about equal engines. That can never work in Formula One if we want manufacturers involved, because Ferrari will not put another engine in the back of their car other than a Ferrari. It would work if you had a grid of Williamses and Toro Rossos and Red Bulls and Force Indies, wouldn't it, Jonty? But it's not going to work with Mercedes, Ferrari, Renault and whatnot in the sport.
No, it's not going to work with them. And in the past, again, good old days, we've almost had it at a point where it was equal engines. Because back when you had the super dominant Ford V8 in the early 80s, you only had Renault running their turbo, Ferrari running their V12. Everyone else pretty much was using the Ford. And yet it was still the other 2 teams dominating out front on certain tracks. So it's just not going to work. It's almost been tried before.
No, I can never see it happening. It's about, a few in chat again saying it's about innovation, Formula One. Can you ever see equal engines been accepted in F1? Like I said, if you got a bunch of, privateer teams, then maybe it would work. But manufacturers, they want to develop their engine how they want, don't they, Chaz?
Yeah, it's never going to happen because they want that advantage. As I said about the money and resource with the cost cap, they want the advantage so that they can go and win instead of their customers.
Yeah, kind of makes sense though from their point of view. Let's talk about race weekend format changes. There was a rumour doing the rounds before Bahrain that they were talking about ditching qualifying and doing a qualifying race. Ross Brawn said it's something they should be exploring because if that mixes up the grid in a non-artificial way, then that's got to be good for the sport. Where do you stand on that first off, Jonty?
I like the idea of having extra race action, but I don't think a qualifying race is the way to go. because the dominant cars will just become even more dominant. It won't mix up the grid, it will standardize it. At the moment, we have weather and a short enough time during qualifying for little incidents to cause a problem, throw someone out in Q1. Whereas in a race, unless it's something major, they're all going to be 2x2.
Yeah. Where do you stand on it, Chaz, initially?
I like the idea, and I think it could work. It's one of those things you'd have to see it actually happen. But I like the idea. I think it would be a good way forward.
So the full proposals put forward, or rumoured proposals, are a 100-kilometre sprint race on a Saturday with no fuel or tyre limitations to determine a grid for the main event on Sunday. The starting grid for the race is decided by the practice sessions. Reverse grid was originally an idea, but they abandoned that through fears that it would be too artificial, which I tend to agree with. Plans to change FP1 and FP2 to 2 one-hour sessions on a Friday to allow fans the opportunity to get close to the cars. Like that is ever going to happen. I hate the idea. I'm going to be perfectly frank. I absolutely hate it. I grew up watching F1, and a Saturday afternoon watching the qualifying, it was driver, car, as one, nobody else, low fuel, fastest tyre on possible. You look at Hamilton's lap in Australia as the most recent example. You look at some of what Senna did and Schumacher. We don't want to lose that from Formula One. That one lap, that it's just pure speed. That is all that is, and ability. And when we had one-shot qualifying, the pressure was on. I absolutely love qualifying, especially with the format as it is, to be fair. I don't think it needs to change, and it depends when they're talking about bringing it in. If they brought it in this season, for example, with 3 engines per driver, who's going to be pushing in a sprint race? And how does it work at tracks like Monaco? If somebody sets the fastest time in practice, chances are they'll be on pole for the race even before we even got the qualifying race underway.
Can I just ask though? So you said whoever finishes fastest in a practice session gets on pole for the race.
Let me find my note. Plans to
Because I'm reading an article here, and it says that the grid for the race is determined by the sprint race on the Saturday, and then there's qualifying about 3 hours before the sprint race to determine the grid for the sprint race, which would replace practice 3.
Oh, I think we're probably reading 2 different articles, Chaz. You know, the thing is, it's rumour, isn't it? So we don't have anything concrete, so it's all out there. But I read that they were reducing FP1 and FP2 to an hour, and then it was, I don't know if they were ditching FP3, which could be actually what you're reading there, Chaz. Actually, that's going to be replaced by another qualifying session. But the same argument I go with on that is, are people going to be pushing as hard to be on pole for, other than in Monaco, because you may as well go for it, pushing as hard to be on pole for a sprint race as they would do to be on pole for the actual race? And also, if you've got a sprint race and everyone's pushing full whack and no tyre limitations, no fuel limitations, and you get a run like, say, Bottas had, or like the move Verstappen had on Hamilton in Bahrain, if you've got a qualifying race, is that second place driver really going to take a chance to overtake to just because they might move a position up the grid through fear that, oh, but if we collide, I could end up last on the grid?
It's the same thing in general just racing, isn't it? Because if Verstappen goes for the move in a normal race, then you could argue that maybe he's fearing that, oh, if I make contact, then I'm going to be out of the Grand Prix. So it's the same kind of do I, don't I?
Yeah, the only difference to that for me is that there's points on the line in a race, so it's worth the move. Can you remember actually going back a few years, back in the old days, you know, do the blurry vision thing that you see in movies, but go back in time a little bit. Can you remember when they initially changed the point system to 10 points for a win and 8 for second?
Yeah.
We suddenly saw drivers in second place fighting for the championship not willing to take that risk to get those 2 extra points. So I guess the point I'm kind of making is, are drivers in a qualifying race going to be willing to make that move for 1 place on the grid if maybe 15 years ago or whatever it was, they're not willing to do it for 2 extra points in a race? Do you know what I mean? To me, they're saying there's no tyre limitations and there's no fuel limitations, but I can't see 20 drivers pushing full whack in qualifying, in a qualifying race, especially if we've got these stupid engine rules still in place.
But that's what I mean. We don't know when, if this does happen, we don't know when. It could be for 2021. We don't know.
Sorry, Jonty, we kind of took over there, mate. Is there anything you want to add to
No,
that?
I've just been thinking, like, because it's trying to follow a similar format to what Formula 2 is.
Yeah.
But the problem they've got there is that in the F2, the Saturday race is the main one. It's the feature race. That's where the biggest points are. And then that determines the grid for the shorter sprint race, which is on Sunday. And that works because later on Sunday, you've got the F1 race. That's why I'm worried. That's one of the reasons why I'm worried the format wouldn't work for Formula 1. Because it splits the two bigger bits of excitement nicely.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, I going back to the first point you made, Jonty, about more track action's brilliant. We all want to see more track action. If they want to introduce a sprint race on a Saturday, I'd rather teams each ran one car and they put their young driver in, or their reserve driver, or their test driver, whatever they're called this week, pop them in and have a second, like a F1 Junior Championship that runs on a Saturday, on a race weekend Saturday. That way we get more track action, but it doesn't detract from the race on Sunday, and we still get those epic qualifying laps that I'm so desperate to keep in F1.
That would work well, but as someone just said in chat, if someone crashes, they're going to struggle on Sunday. Oh, they're not even going to get their qualifying on Saturday. So that would work, but it would require a third car.
Oh yeah, there'd need to be a return of the third car, the T car as they used to call it. That would be a definite thing. But then I guess that's going to go against the cost capping, isn't it? So
exactly.
I can't see a qualifying race happening. I'll be delighted if it doesn't. Chaz, obviously, you quite like the idea, but do you honestly see it going through?
In terms of it going through, I don't think it will. And when it comes to what system they should use, I would still go back to the 2003, 2004 system of one-shot quali on a Friday and a Saturday, because I think that was a lot more entertaining.
More pressure on the driver, wasn't there? There was no margin for error. You didn't get a second chance, and that's why I loved that. I know it was a little bit unfair sometimes because of the weather or the track conditions weren't quite right, but that swings and roundabouts in F1, isn't it? It's always been the case. It might rain for you in, let's say, Bahrain then. That'd be unlucky, wouldn't it? It might rain for you at one race, but then, 3 races down the line, it might rain for your rivals. So it's just the way it goes in Formula 1. I quite enjoyed one-shot quali. I just loved the pressure and some of the mistakes we saw. And it gave us some epic drives from the likes of Kimi Räikkönen, for example.
Yeah, and you say about the weather, that can happen in the current qualifying system. Yeah. So it doesn't really change, that aspect.
I will say, though, I have no problem whatsoever keeping the current qualifying format. I absolutely love it. And at the weekend, it was brilliant. I think we're going to get the same in China. So we are going to hop into Q&A, but we will continue talking about what we're talking about. You guys start popping your questions for us in the chat. So we will carry on talking, but I just want to open it up to everybody now so we can get some other points of view on this one. Yeah, I don't like the idea, by the way, of dropping FP1 and FP2 by half an hour. Not so much for me, because sat at home watching, it's not the most thrilling session in the world. Neither of them are. However, when I go to Silverstone in July and the amount of money we have to spend on the bloody tickets, I want the cars on track for as long as possible. So, yeah, I don't like the idea of lowering those sessions, Jonty. I don't know if you think it's a good idea.
It covers all the bases. There's a lot of fans of F1 who only tune in for the race. They don't even care about qualifying.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot, probably a bigger proportion, but a lot of F1 fans who will watch every minute of every session and are glued to it. Even if it's super boring and raining and nothing's happening, they're still glued to it, hearing what's going on in the pits and seeing Ted walk up and down, getting little bits of insight.
Yeah.
So I don't think they should drop them at all. I enjoy watching them.
I do. I was just going to say, that's enough about us saddos who sit there and watch it, whatever. Just take a question. Jonathan Fox wants to know, would you welcome the idea of 3 drivers per team? Chaz?
No. I'd rather keep it the way it is.
Jonty?
I wouldn't mind as long as they're capable. It's not just sticking in the cheapest kid they could find. Someone who actually deserves to be there. I probably wouldn't mind that, but it's only going to be when the cars are closer, because otherwise it will just destroy the Constructors' Championship even more.
I think it all comes down to whether or not we can get more constructors in. If we end up in a situation where teams do leave or they fold because things don't change, I think 3-car teams may have to happen so that we've got a decent number of cars on the grid. But if I'd rather have more teams than more drivers, if that makes sense, more drivers per team. So, yeah. FP123 is where the info gets to the fans. That's completely true, Tom Connors, actually. That's a very good point. You don't get a lot of info, do you? But you get more in that, and you kind of learn more over a weekend from practice. That you were just saying, actually, John, more from practice than you do from qualifying the race sometimes. So, vlogging at Charlie, should we ban pay drivers? I'm torn on pay drivers. I'm not a big fan of people being able to turn up and pay for a seat, but if it keeps teams afloat, then, you know.
Yeah. It just wouldn't happen. It can't happen. They would find a way around it.
Yeah, I agree.
Ace Garcia, interesting point actually is made here. I heard somebody ask this the other week, not on one of our streams, but I think it was on an Ask Crofty or something. Do you think all drivers should score points? I think it would make the race more exciting because everyone is fighting for positions across the field. It's a very good point, and it does stand up as a point. However, for me, you race for reward, and just turning up knowing that if you finish 20th, you're going to get a point, that's not something I'd approve of.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And as well, the drivers in 11th, 12th, 13th, you've got to give them something to fight for more aggressively.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Owen Laslet, will Ericsson retain his seat? You'd have to say based on Sunday he should, but to be perfectly frank, I don't think it matters what he does. He's probably going to retain his seat anyway. But let's not get into that one. Who is more likely at the moment to join Ferrari, Grosjean or Magnussen? Asks Martin Colding. Good question.
Right now, Magnussen.
Yeah.
If the performance between them two continues for the rest of the season, it'd have to be Magnussen, but there's still, 18 races left? 19? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that Magnussen himself or someone in his management team's taken a look at last year and gone, you need to pick your game up, and he certainly has. He's come out fighting straight from the off in Australia.
Thank you very much, Drippy Trunk. What a lovely name for your contribution. Really appreciate that. It says 3 people per team, but only top 2/1 score. That's one way to do it, I suppose. Yeah, to keep the grid full and not sort of see a lockout of the top 10 from the main team. So it's a good point. Just for a question I wanted to answer, I've lost it now.
Yeah, I saw one.
Shout out to Ericsson. Just look at Baku last year was carnage.
There we are. Sorry, may I? Evolution Consulting asks thoughts on once a year a high bank oval track race. Something different, maybe. I wouldn't mind seeing that happen. Just to see what the difference is like.
It would be interesting. Possibly carnage, but yeah, I mean, if it gives us something a bit different, that would be, yeah. Just try. I think that's image in my head is quite terrifying.
Alnado's gone. There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, good point. Actually, yeah, they should all be all right. I can't find that question. I feel awful now. It was a really good question as well. Matthew Campbell, who will be in Mercedes next season? Depends. I'm not going to say too much, Jonty, because I don't want to raise any concerns about Hamilton's demeanour through fear that we suddenly become the Hamilton hating podcast. Troll logic there for you, mate.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, we said nothing but nice stuff about him on Sunday as well, but there you go. It depends where you fall on what Hamilton's going to do, I guess, because I'm not convinced something isn't going on. There's something not quite right. I said it on Sunday. If he's genuinely committed to Mercedes, as he said all winter, and Mercedes want to sign him up, why has that contract not been signed? And why, gearbox penalty aside, was he so, quite frankly, miserable all weekend in Bahrain and quite angry with his team at times? A lot of frustration coming through. So maybe a decision hasn't been taken either way yet. So I guess that's kind of got to be taken into account. But as of right now, I think they'd probably stick with Hamilton and Bottas.
Right now, I don't believe at all that Hamilton is 100% committed to Mercedes because, as you said, he would have signed it by now. He had, December, January, and February to sign it. And if they were saying, oh, it's just a matter of days or whatever, then why didn't he sign it? There's definitely something going on. He's not committed. He's waiting for something to happen, I think.
Yeah, it's really weird. You have to think he's highest paid driver in the most successful team. What could he possibly be waiting for?
To see how his season goes. If it doesn't go well, maybe he'll just retire.
I'd be surprised if we hear anything now before mid-season. I can't, like I said, if everything's done and dusted and they're happy with each other, why hasn't that been signed? So there's something there, isn't there? So, but I guess to get back to the question, like I said, I think as things stand right now, I think Ocon's been okay start of the season, not spectacular. So I think Ricciardo will go to Ferrari, it's looking like, although he's denied today there's any deal in place. I can't look past, I don't think George Russell's ready, so why not keep Hamilton and Bottas for another year? Give Ocon another year at Force India and give Russell a chance to mature a little bit.
Well, let's wait first because the Force India has been not that great and Ocon has scored points for Force India already. So as that car improves, I think Ocon might start to turn some heads again.
Yeah. How about we create an ex-F1 driver series, says Vlogging at Charlie. I'm down for that. Chaz is not.
No.
Unless you include all the idiots like Maldonado and Ide and Kobayashi, then maybe, but yeah.
I think you've been generous there calling Ide just an idiot, mate. It's a damn sight worse than that. I think for a bit of fun it'd be good.
Yeah.
Carthit, Race of Champions, good point, Carthit. We kind of got it, haven't we, in a way?
Yeah, but it's such a silly, gimmicky little track and car. We want a Race of Champions in something proper. It can never be in a real F1 car or even a classic F1 car because they're way too valuable. But stick them in touring cars or Aussie V8s or anything like that. In fact, yeah, now I think about it, I'd see that. Oh, XF1 drivers, Aussie V8s around Bathurst.
Games Donovan. If you were a guy like Max, would you stay at Red Bull to finish what you started or give up to the highest, strongest offer? That is a good question. I mean, first of all, if I was a guy like Max, I'd be a lot better off. But me personally, I'd stay to finish what I started because that's the kind of person that I am. But if I were Max, I'd probably go for the highest offer because he's desperate to be a world champion as quickly as he can be, isn't he, Chaz? So go for it if the offer comes.
Yeah, if the offer comes, he has to take it. And I think he's probably waiting for an offer from Ferrari.
That would make sense.
I'm pretty sure the Ferrari deal's pretty much done for Verstappen long term. Not anytime soon, probably 2021, 22 onwards.
Yeah. Wasn't there, was it Austria where there was big reports that he'd already signed a pre-contract or he met with Ferrari for contract negotiations? So if he has signed it, it was probably there.
Sorry, I'm just looking for questions. I'm listening to you. I'm not completely ignoring you. 2 compound jump in China from soft to ultra soft, skipping the super soft, says Nick Sloth Lawson. So I covered my mouth when I spoke there. We were intrigued by that when we first saw it, weren't we, John? So a real chance to mix the strategy up there.
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that. I've thought they should do this for quite a while because it really does throw up different strategies.
I'm surprised by the jump for China. I thought they might try it for somewhere like Canada but yeah, why not? It's certainly going to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, the only the only issue is the fact that we've still got the must use one of the Pirelli designated compounds. That's the issue.
Good point. Yeah.
Which I
It's
think
kind of going to take away from it.
But I think that's the soft, which means at some point everyone has to run the soft, which kind of detracts from it a little bit. I'd like to see the chance of some of the lower teams maybe saying, we'll just stick the medium on, go right to the end, no stops. Whereas other teams could do like 3 or 4 stops on the ultras.
Charles wants to know what your opinions are of the China circuit. Chaz, we'll come to you on that one, mate. We'll take a couple more and then we'll end the stream. Gone over the hour already.
I like the circuit. I understand why it gets criticism, but for example, that long back straight and then the braking zone, it's absolutely bang on what you need for, dive bombs and just overtaking. And I like the circuit, and I think this race is going to be great because of the appearance of the Ultrasoft, because the teams, when they start on that for the race, they are going to have to pit so early because that tyre will not survive.
Yeah. I always thought it was a good track. I particularly like the first few turns, which first time I saw it, I didn't think I would, but they just produced some great scrapping.
I like that first couple of corners. That real long. Is it two turns in one, really, isn't it? But it's just nice and long and sweeping, and it's quite a tricky one. I do like China as a race. I don't like it on the F1 game. I'm crap at it. But yeah, I do quite like it as a track. The Wolf says, surely pit stops were safer with refueling, 7-second pit stops than sub 2 seconds without. I think pit stops are going to be dangerous, whatever, aren't they, Jonty?
Yeah, they are. It's going to need a lot more investigation to make them safer, or just stick with them how they are and accept that things are going to happen.
Yeah. They are talking actually today. The FIA, Charlie Whiting, is going to look at the pit stops. He says it's just too much of a coincidence now that all these cars are getting these unsafe releases. So we'll not get back into that, but they are going to be looking at it and hopefully make some changes to make it a little bit safer. But obviously these freak accidents happen in Formula 1, but I'm not going to get back into it, I swear, because we'll just be off on one then. So I'm going to take a couple more questions. For spots them, I'll just shout them out and we'll give some quick fire answers, but I'll try and find an absolute belter to finish on. So last questions in the chat now, guys, and then we'll be ending the stream. Does Hamilton have to win in Shanghai? I don't think he has to, but I think in terms of championship, he doesn't have to. But for me, psychologically, he does.
Yeah, I agree, because he can't let Vettel build the confidence and build the gap, because he will just run off.
What race are you most looking forward to the most this year, Jonty?
France.
Chaz?
Canada.
I'd go Canada as well. Canada or Spa for me.
Yeah, we should predictions for China. Should we do those?
Oh, tell them though, they won't watch my video tomorrow, Chaz.
Well, I'll give my predictions. For quali, probably Hamilton on pole, just by Vettel. And then I'm going to go Vettel to win, just by Hamilton.
I'm going to be honest, because we've all been talking about how down he looked in Bahrain and how not with it he was. Based on F1 history, Lewis Hamilton will turn up and will blow everybody away this weekend, and we'll all go, oh, we'll shut up next time then. It's just the way I feel at the minute.
Honestly, just tying in with the previous question, he absolutely has to win. The mental dominance Vettel's got on him right now is huge. So Hamilton will either be miles ahead of everyone or nowhere.
He's got the psychological edge, and I have to say as well, I said it in my video, and I think you guys would agree, fantastic to see another driver jump into defence of a big rival like that in that post-race press conference, because, yeah, he called Verstappen what he called him, but so what? They're racing drivers, for God's sake, trying to make a story out of nothing. But good to see Vettel jump to defence there.
Yeah, it was. And the journalist asked such a stupid question, and the journalist got the response that he deserved.
Yeah, he really did. That was such a proper media hack weighted question.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a little bit of gossip for a front page. That was all it was.
Yeah, lazy journalism, I think you could probably say it. I know they've got a job to do, but that's just ridiculous. Enough happened in that race to ask Lewis another question, but it was just so good to see him defend. And I think, yeah, funnily enough, Max Verstappen's not really bothered, is he? He sort of shrugged it off and was like, so, whatever, it's the end of the race. And racing for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying to beat each other on track. They're not going to come out and go, well, he's a lovely chap, isn't he? It's not ridiculous. Just the press sometimes are just terrible. Just looking for one more question.
I did spot, I think it came up on Twitter yesterday, a little stat which makes the start of this year interesting. The last time a driver won the first 2 races and didn't take the title was 1982.
Really?
So read into that what you will.
Wow, that's yeah. Sorry. A couple of people asking about the weather for the weekend in the chat. Obviously for Shanghai, not where you are or generally. There is a forecast of rain for Saturday, but Sunday is dry and sunny and about 17 degrees according to the Met Office. But the minute I start listening to the Met Office, no. It was Alain Prost in 1982, says G-Van,
yep.
Sorry. Wow. Do you like your spaghetti with or without meatballs?
Oh, no, without. It has to be proper bolognese.
Yes, I just asked that question, Chaz. It's okay. It's yogurt all over again. Just going to see. Has anybody spotted a question we could end on? Or I'll just take one and then we'll... I'm not ending on a spaghetti and meatballs one. There's no way. I will find another one.
Hold on, wait. Where is it? Just lost it. Who will be the first driver mathematically to lose the title out of the top teams? So to go out of, they can't win the title anymore.
Ooh.
I missed that because that's actually a really good question. Oh, that's an easy one to answer there. The Mighty Dash Lincolnshire sausage, yeah, all day long, mate. I'm from Lincolnshire, living in Lincoln, so yeah. But anyway,
based on the first 2 races, I'm going to say Ricciardo.
Going to be a Red Bull boy, isn't it? Just out the top 3 teams, is that what we're...
Yeah, it's out. So the top 6 drivers. Not currently, but last year.
I think it will be a Red Bull. Because Kimi's really come out fighting this year. He really has. Whether he'll stick with that, I don't know. But otherwise, I would have said Kimi. Killy? Not yet.
I'm going to go for a shock. Bottas.
It could well be. But that will be down to his performances more than the car.
Yeah.
And despite coming second, Bahrain kind of supports that.
Yeah.
Chaz has gone Bottas. Jonty's gone Danny Rick. I'll tell you what, I'll go Raikkonen because then we've got one from each team. And maybe, just maybe, Jonty, when we do our end of season stream, we might have got something right. Because it's all gone wrong at the minute. That's for sure. So, yeah, I think that's it. I haven't seen any other questions to come in for. So, oh no, Starbuck 89. Grid Girls back for Russia. Apparently they're back for Monaco.
Yeah.
So it just shows that a ban from Liberty Media holds no weight if a circuit decides they're doing it anyway. So I guess it's a case of, from what I read into that and what we kind of maybe missed at the time, is that Liberty Media are not using Grid Girls, but there's nothing to stop the circuits using them.
So grid girls are allowed then.
Yeah. Would you say that's about right, John T?
That sounds right. They have nothing to do with the operation of the circuit or anything to do with the race weekend itself. So, yeah, track can do what it likes.
There you go. We'll leave it at that, which I think people will be happy to see some grid girls back. It's all a storm in a teacup and means nothing really, does it, at the end of the day? But there we go. Thank you very much, Chaz and John T. I know we kind of went all over the place in that one, but so much to try and cover. But at least I know now that John T would rather have a bolognese than a meatball. So that's what I'm taking away from this stream. But thank you very much, John T, for joining me. Thank you as well, Chaz.
Yep, thank you for having me on. And also thanks for everyone watching.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of us disagreeing. It made it more interesting.
We never disagree. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Yep, that is it from me then. I'm going to be back on... When am I back? I'm back tomorrow with the Bahrain Grand Prix preview, and then of course there'll be the qualifying report on Saturday morning, and we will be streaming live on Sunday pretty much straight after the race, with a lot of coffee in the system again to try and get through that one. So yeah, looking forward to that. Video tomorrow will be up between 4 and 6:30 UK time ish, and the qualifying report shortly after qualifying as well. Thank you very much for joining me for this one. I know there's a lot of information there. Tried to get through it all, and if we missed anything, don't worry, we will re-explore this when we get all the proper facts and the final blueprint is laid down. You can follow me on social media. Links to Facebook, Twitter and Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.